Just
Okay.
starting this. Hello, very good evening, and welcome to the 13th edition of the Trendz Talks. As you know, we started during this pandemic, and our endeavor is to try and bring in people so that they can have a conversation with us on different subjects. So today, as you understand, the topic is on sports commentating. We have our guest speaker as Siraj Syed, and he's going to share his experience during his days in Singapore when he would do sports broadcasting. So, as you understand, the earlier days we used to have just two channels, Doordarshan National and the Metro networks. And if it comes to sports, we would normally be privileged enough being in a metro to watch all the matches when the people on the national network would be deprived. And later on, we did have a lot of international sports channels coming into India somewhere in the 90s. We would have something called as a Prime Sports, which turned into Star Networks, or the Star Sports Network, and then followed it up with 10 Sports, ESPN, Nimbus, many other sports channels. So, to begin with, let me invite Siraj Syed. He's going to talk about his life journey in sports broadcasting, especially during his stint in Singapore. So, let me give the floor to Siraj so you can begin your talk today.
Thank you, Krishna. Welcome to all the audience. It's a small audience, but I'm sure it's a very interested and dedicated audience. And so I'm happy to be addressing you. I hope I'm audible to the listeners.
Yes, sir.
I am? Okay.
Yeah.
It is Cricket has been described as the game of glorious uncertainties, and nothing could be more true about my own career in cricket and cricket commentary, except this particular saying, which says glorious uncertainties. I was very fond of the game. I have to start at the beginning because unless you have a passion for the game, it will be difficult or possibly impossible for you to do commentary or arrange for other people to do commentary on that game. As a child, I used to play cricket, and I was hoping to get selected in my school team. Unfortunately, in my school team, there were very good players, and I had little chance. I went to a school in Mumbai called Bharda New High School, Bharda. That is the school that has produced some of the greatest cricketers who played in the 50s and 60s, right up to the 70s. That is Vijay Merchant and Kohli Umrigar and Nari Contractor and Rusi Surti and Buddhi Kundaran. These were the big stars of that time. By the time I became a student of this school, these people had passed and passed on and joined their own professions and their careers. Unfortunately, I had a dual problem. One was the fact that there were very good players in the school who made it very difficult for me to go and join them. The second problem was that they had rehearsals, well, practice. The right word is practice. 2 hours before school and 2 hours after school. And my school timing was 10:45 to 4:45. So that would mean that they would rehearse from 8:30 in the morning to 10:30 in the morning, and in the evening from 5 to 7. Now, I used to live quite a bit distance away from my school, and it used to take me 1 to 1.5 hours to travel to school. So if I were to add that, I would be spending something like 16 hours a day with school and traveling and practice for cricket. So because of that as well, I really did not take it up seriously at all. And last but not the least, I was suffering from asthma. And you know that asthma is a disease which affects your breathing. And I was basically a pace bowler. With my physique now, I even now don't look like anybody who can intimidate anybody. But I did have a fast ball which could trouble people. But the problem was that asthma would come in my way, and after bowling a few balls, I would get very exhausted and breathless as well. So because of all these various factors, I could not make it to the school team. And I thought that maybe in the college team, I will give it a try. And by the time I went into the college team, another problem had cropped up. And that problem is this. I had developed short sight. And I went to the selections for the college cricket team. And there I tried my luck. I bowled the fastest I could. And afterwards, after the practice session and selection session was over, I went to the professor in charge, whom I knew, who was my professor as well. And I asked him, "Sir, did I make it?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Sir, I can assure you that none of the bowlers who bowled before me or after me were as fast as I was. I can guarantee you, and still you have not selected me." And he said, "Yes, you were the fastest, but do you know where you were bowling? You were not bowling at the stumps, you were bowling at the slips. And this just won't work. So you have some problem?" I said, "Sir, to confess, I have short sight." And he says, "You can wear glasses, but there are very, very few cricketers at that time. There were very few who wore glasses. We can only think of two in that era. One was Mike Smith and later Clive Lloyd. And most other cricketers, 99% of the cricketers did not wear glasses. So a fast bowler wearing glasses was unheard of. You know, these Mike Smith and Clive Lloyd were both batsmen. So there went my great chances of making it big in cricket as a cricketer, as a bowler, I was partly an all-rounder as well. I would hit pinch hitter, they would call me today. I would hit a few fours and sixes before I would get out. And that went into cold storage after that, and then the interest after that was confined to listening to commentary and watching television. Now, in 1984, I started a course called Announcing, Broadcasting, Comparing and Dubbing. And there were some people who came to join this course. They were very, very keen to do sports commentary and cricket commentary in particular. So I said, yes, it is also my passion. I wouldn't mind teaching you how to do cricket commentary. And I'm very happy to say that those three gentlemen later on became very popular radio commentators, and they are still around. They were much younger than me. One is called Ashutosh Deshmukh. One is S. Kishore, and the third one is Sunil Vaidya. Kishore does it in English, Ashutosh and Sunil do it in Hindi. Luckily, I am bilingual. मैं दोनों भाषाओं में बोलता हूँ. कृष्णराज ने मुझसे कहा था कि थोड़ी बहुत हिंदी भी इस्तेमाल करेंगे तो अच्छा रहेगा, क्योंकि हमारी ऑडियंस हिंदी भी समझती है. तो इन लोगों को मैंने सिखाया, and so my interest was rekindled. And then I got a chance to not only interview but record 2 half-hour programs for radio featuring Sunil Gavaskar. Now, this was a tricky thing because the program for which he was recorded was called S. Kumar's The Filmi Muqaddama. And in a Filmi Muqaddama, how does one get Sunil Gavaskar? And we wanted Sunil Gavaskar because he was so popular at that time. He'd broken all records. Then we discovered that he had sung one song, he had acted in 2 films, out of which one of them he was just practicing, he was just shown doing net practice, and the other one he had a bit of a role. So there was some filmy connection. And so because of that filmy connection, I went and met Sunil, and Sunil was very kind enough to not only give us time, but when he discovered that I was a student of Bharda New High School, and Sunil is not very much older than me, he's a few years older than me, he began to, mention names of people who had been students of Bharda New High School, my seniors. And I knew all of them by name, and I had seen some of them play, because when I was in the 5th or the 6th standard, these people were in the 10th or the 11th standard. And so he was so happy to share all those memories, because he had played against these people. And उन्होंने थोड़ी देर के बाद में कहा कि अच्छा किरण आशर आपके साथ में थे क्या? I said, हाँ, किरण आशर तो मेरे कैप्टन थे, थोड़े आगे थे मुझसे, लेकिन suddenly he picked up the intercom. Now today people don't even know what's the intercom. Pressed the intercom, and surprisingly, for the same company, Kiran Asher was just 2 cabins away. He was sitting and working with Sunil Gavaskar in the same company. So Kiran Asher came down and had a long chat with me, and we had some tea and biscuits and things like that. And after which, Sunil came and recorded those 2 programs. S. Kumar's का फिल्मी मुकदमा उन्होंने रिकॉर्ड किया हमारे साथ, 2 आधे घंटे के प्रोग्राम. हालांकि तब उन्हें हिंदी बिल्कुल नहीं आती थी. अब तो उन्होंने हिंदी इतनी सीख ली है कि हाल में मैंने पिछली 2 सीरीज IPL वगैरह में मैं और भी कुछ थोड़ा बहुत सुना, तो इतनी अच्छी हिंदी बोलते हैं. One cannot believe that this man at one time used to be so afraid or diffident about talking in Hindi, because he felt his Hindi was not too good. So that was brush with Sunil Gavaskar. Now somehow the word spread that I had taught 3 people how to do commentary, and one man who was also already doing radio commentary and quite popular somehow felt that he needed to brush up his commentary. And he came to me and he said, "Sir, you conduct your classes on Saturday afternoons. And, unfortunately, I work on Saturdays and I'm not able to come and attend those classes at that time. Will you be able to give me private tuitions?" So I tried to explain to him that, cricket and commentary are such a mass thing that, private tuitions is not the ideal thing. इसमें जब तक माहौल नहीं पैदा होगा मैच का और बहुत सारे लोग नहीं होंगे, तब तक मजा नहीं आएगा. So he was very disappointed. He says, "Then unfortunately I won't be able to come." And that man's name was Harsha Bhogle. And I never taught him. The strange thing is I never taught him. But in some strange ways, he feels that I have taught him. So if he feels so, I am honored, because he is such a great man. And now we jump straight to the year 1995. At that time, Star TV had already started doing Hindi commentary from Hong Kong. And ESPN was planning to start from Singapore. And they had a hunt for a person who would run the service, because it was to be in Hindi. ये सारी commentary हिंदी में करना थी. English की तो वो उनकी original commentary आती थी. उनकी जो team थी, they had a team of many foreigners and a few Indians as well among them, who would already be quite capable of handling that department. So I heard that they are looking out for somebody to run the whole service. And this was given to me in the shape of a newspaper clipping by a friend of mine who said that this is an ad in the newspapers that ESPN requires somebody to do program coordination for Hindi commentary from Singapore. And we feel you are the right person to go and do this job. I said, why do you feel so? Because I have never done commentary so far. They said, no, you have been to Singapore. I had been to Singapore once on a small holiday, and I liked the place. So they said, you have been to Singapore and you like the place. I said, having been to Singapore and liking the place is something quite different from going to Singapore to do a job in ESPN. And I was doing quite well in Mumbai and India. So many shows I was comparing, so much of radio program I was doing, so much of radio programming I was doing. And I was acting. I'd done a lot of television serials. I had done several films. So why would I want to? Because all this would be finished. I'd have to check up everything and then go to Singapore. So they said, well, never mind, just give it a try. So I looked at the clipping and I found that the last date was just 2 days away. And those days, we didn't have express couriers. There were couriers, but they would not take two days to deliver to Singapore. They would take 4 or 5 days to deliver, and they would charge a bomb, 1,000 rupees and even more than that. So I said, but my application will not even reach in time. And Singapore, they're very particular about time and deadline and things like that. So they said, find some way. And then I found some way because I knew that, Singapore-based ESPN had one agency in India called Modi. It was run by the Modi Group. And they were handling some of the ESPN affairs in India. So what I did was, I called Modi and got the fax numbers of ESPN in Singapore. I said, this is the fastest way of delivering my application. तो वो फैक्स नंबर उन्होंने मुझे दे दिए और मैंने फौरन वो फैक्स कर दिया और वो तो तुरंत मिल गया उनको फैक्स तो ऑन द स्पॉट मिल जाता है वो बात खत्म हो गई मेरे ख्याल में ये बात नवंबर दिसंबर 1995 की है और मैं भूल भी गया उसके बारे में अचानक क्या हुआ कि मैं फरवरी के महीने में एक शो कंपेयर करने के लिए कथक प्रोग्राम कंपेयर करने के लिए जयपुर गया था तो मेरी सेक्रेटरी हुआ करती थी बंबई में उस जमाने में उसका मुझे वहां फोन आया वो दिन भर तो हम बाहर रहते थे मोबाइल तो आए नहीं थे तब तक आने वाले थे लेकिन तब तक आए नहीं थे तो उसका मुझे मेरे होटल में फोन आया कि सर ये ESPN से फैक्स आया है और फैक्स में लिखा है कि इसी फैक्स को साइन करके दोबारा फैक्स कर दीजिए टू कंफर्म द अपॉइंटमेंट तो आई सेड इस तरह से होता है क्या द काइंड ऑफ सिलेक्शन प्रोसेस दैट वी हियर सो कॉम्प्लेक्स तो फिर उन्होंने इंक्वायरी की तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं जस्ट कंफर्म दैट you're interested and somebody will come and interview you after that तो मैंने कहा ठीक है वो आप sign on my behalf and send it और उसके बाद में one lady surprisingly it was a lady and her name was Jackie Chan it was Jacqueline Chan but everybody used to call her Jackie Chan so that was a big joke because you all know who Jackie Chan is. So she flew down from Singapore, invited me for an interview at the Oberoi Towers, which is the costliest hotel in Mumbai. and had a long chat and made me do IQ test and EQ test and this and that. And after that, again, we forgot all about it. Until finally one day, another fax came that, yes, now this is your final appointment letter. You sign it. And I said, I am not happy with the terms. I asked for better terms. So they said, okay. They gave me better terms. I said, now I have no reason to refuse to go. Something that was pulling me back was my mother. I used to look after my mother. And that was a bit of an issue. But so this was once in a lifetime opportunity, and I thought that I should make the most of it, and I flew off to Singapore. And what happens in Singapore is the day I arrive, Jackie Chan organizes a very lavish dinner for me at one of the costliest Japanese restaurants where people are eating sushi and things that I can't even touch. I feel very particular about eating live food. I've never done that. I have nothing against people who can, but that's what she organized. Then it was a Saturday, and then she briefed me and she said, look, you have to set up the whole service, the entire service of cricket commentary, cricket and a few other sports as well, but mainly cricket. And we will give you 6 months' time, and we will allow you to recruit the team that you want. You'll have a free hand in recruiting people. So I said, that's good, because I was in a strange country. Of course, I had visited Singapore, but I had been there for just 2 or 3 days, and I knew nothing about Singapore beyond the few tourist spots that I had seen. And the fact that it was a clean country with fresh air and things like that. I said, okay, we'll work it out. That was on a Friday and a Saturday. And Sunday, being a holiday, I took a break. Monday, I went to work, and I was shown around in my office. From morning till lunch, it took me, that much of time to, it was a huge office, to see and check what kind of stuff is where, and whose office is where, and where is the canteen, where is the toilet, everything, all locations. And I was just trying to absorb everything when at 2, Jackie Chan called me and said, there has been a slight change of plans. And I said, what? I was afraid. There was a sinking feeling in my heart that there's something dangerous that is going to happen. So she said, well, we are going on air today, right now, in a few hours. In 5 hours, we are going on air at about 7:30 p.m. And you have to organize the commentary, you have to organize the commentators, and you have to make sure that everything goes off smoothly. Now, what happened to the 6 months? No idea. What happened to the recruitment that I was told that I'll be allowed to go ahead with and pick and choose? All went for a toss, as we would say in cricket. But I had a minor heart attack. I mean, not literally, but I said, what? Today, in 5 hours? Has anybody ever set up a television channel in 5 hours? It is my humble challenge that if you look up the Guinness Book of Records, you won't find any such entry. But I think such an entry should be there. That one man was told at 2:30 p.m. to start an entirely new television channel by 7:30 p.m. And he did. How did he do it? First thing is that Jackie Chan was a little helpful. She had spoken to the Hindi school, वहाँ पर जो हिंदी स्कूल थी, क्योंकि कमेंट्री हिंदी में करनी थी, इसलिए उन्होंने हिंदी स्कूल में बात की थी कि जो पेरेंट्स थे हिंदी के स्टूडेंट्स के, उनमें से जिनको क्रिकेट का शौक था, उनको जैकी ने 5-6 लोगों को जो अच्छा क्रिकेट जानते थे, खेलते थे, बुला लिया था. और they came around 5 or something, and they were working people around 5:30, 6, and we were to go on air at 7:30. This was the only help I got from her. Now, whether these people were qualified or not, इनको कितना आता था, कितना नहीं आता था, वो सब काम मेरा था चेक करना. इसके अलावा प्रोमोज होते हैं, आप छोटे छोटे एड्स देखते हैं जो स्टेशन को ही प्रमोट करते हैं या प्रोग्राम्स को प्रमोट करते हैं, सब का सब ESPN पर, समथिंग लाइक दैट, कुछ ना कुछ इस तरह की चीजें. तो वो करने वाले, वो एक अलग आर्ट होता है. The normal commentator cannot do that. Promo voice and commercial voice are different categories compared to cricketers and cricket commentating voices. तो उसमें एक तो कमेंट्री मैंने खुद कर ली और दूसरी मैंने दूसरे लोगों से कराई, 2-3 लोगों को टेस्ट करके. और एक गोल्फ का आइटम था, तो गोल्फ के बारे में तो मुझे कुछ भी नहीं आता, तो मैंने गोल्फ को भरोसे पे एक आदमी के थोड़ा सा बर्डीज और ईगल और ये वो उसमें 2-3 टर्म्स इस तरह के आते हैं, वो थोड़ी सी बातचीत की उससे और उसको मैंने कमेंट्री के लिए वहां लगा दिया. लेकिन ये तो पहले दिन की बात थी, लेकिन मुझे डबल स्पीड पे काम करना पड़ा. तो मैंने तुरंत मेरे अपने ही स्टूडेंट आशुतोष देशमुख को बुलाया इंडिया से, और दूसरा मैंने टॉम ऑल्टर को बुलाया. टॉम ऑल्टर एक्टर हैं, लेकिन वो क्रिकेट के बड़े पैशनेट फॉलोअर थे और खेलते भी थे, फिल्म इंडस्ट्री की क्रिकेट टीम को ऑर्गेनाइज करते थे. सो Tom being so close to me, I thought this is the best thing I can do. He would be delighted because he had never done, he had done it on radio, but he had never done television commentary. And what we were doing was called off-tube commentary. Off-tube commentary means that, say the match is being played in Canada, and we are watching the match sitting in Singapore. And we are doing commentary which is being heard in India. And people who are hearing it in Singapore, उनके कानों में आवाज जो है वो अंग्रेजी में आ रही है और उनको बोलना है हिंदी में. ये काफी कंफ्यूजन होता था, इसलिए कई बार वो एकदम चुप हो जाते थे, कुछ बोलते ही नहीं थे, देखते ही रह जाते थे. तो मैं कहता था अरे कुछ बोलो. उनको हेडफोन में, जैसे हेडफोन लगाते हैं इस तरह के हेडफोन मैं लगा के उनसे बात करता था, जो आवाज माइक्रोफोन में नहीं जाती थी. अरे कुछ बोलो, कमेंट ऑन समथिंग, कमेंट ऑन द वेदर, कमेंट ऑन द क्राउड, द पीपल, कमेंट ऑन दोस 2 pigeons who are sitting in the middle of the pitch, call them umpires if you like, they are white pigeons sitting out. तो इस तरह की गाइड मैं करता था उनको, तो वो कमेंट्री करने लगते थे. बाद में थोड़ा थोड़ा करके अच्छे कमेंटेटर भी मुझे मिले. अरुण लाल मिले, उनको मैंने बहुत सारी हिंदी सिखाई, उन्होंने खुद भी सीखी, लेकिन मैंने बहुत सारी हिंदी उनको सिखाई. और कुछ मुश्किल लोग भी मिले, कीर्ति आजाद मिले, जिनके साथ काम करने में थोड़ी परेशानी हुई, मगर एक एक करके बहुत सारे कमेंटेटर हमने जमा किए और कभी कभी जब कोई नहीं होता था तो कमेंट्री मैं ही कर देता था। दूसरी बात क्या थी कि मुझे कुछ भी करने के पैसे एक्स्ट्रा नहीं मिलते थे, मुझे तनख्वाह जो मिलती थी बस उतनी ही मिलती थी। तो ये सारे प्रोमोस जो मैं करता था, 100 प्रोमो मैंने किए, कम से कम 100 से ज्यादा। और मैचेस वगैरह भी थोड़ी बहुत इन कमेंट्रीज मैंने की अकेले, रणजी ट्रॉफी की या कोई जो छोटी मैच होती थी वो मैं ही कर देता था। उसके भी मुझे कुछ पैसे नहीं मिले और मुझे पहले से पता था कि इसके पैसे मुझे मिलेंगे नहीं। तो ये सिलसिला 1 साल चला सिर्फ। 1 साल के अंदर सेटल हो गया सारा ESPN का कमेंट्री सेटअप। कई लोगों को मैंने ट्रेन कर दिया और शायद लोग कहते हैं कि यू कैन डिग योर ओन ग्रेव समटाइम्स। मैंने इतनी सारी तैयारी कर दी कि इन लोगों को लगा कि मेरे बाद भी अगर मैं नहीं रहूंगा तब भी ये चलता रहेगा, दिस थिंग विल कीप वर्किंग, द होल सेटअप विल कीप वर्किंग इवन व्हेन आई एम नॉट देयर। And it did. So even after I left, though I left and I stayed in Singapore for another 7 years, and as I'm nearing 30 minutes of talking to you, I would like to end this narration here. But I stayed on for 7 more years in Singapore, and there too it was very, very, very tough period, against all odds. That's the best term to describe it. I survived there, and if there's any question that you have about my stint in ESPN Singapore or in Singapore in general, which was till 2004, I'd be only very happy to answer it. Thank you for your indulgence and patience, and I await your questions.
Thank you very much, Siraj sir. It was very interesting. We would have wanted to listen to a little more of your experience during those times. And the way you began during the initial days wherein you met Sunil Gavaskar, Kiran Ashar, yeah, that was a good input. And then even about Harsha Bogle, who says that you actually trained him. So why would he say that? Because we know about Harsha Bogle, who is a very good commentator both in English and Hindi now. Why do you think he would actually say that you have been a mentor or you have been a guide to him?
I am honored. We are a mutual admiration society. When I was in Singapore, when I joined ESPN in Singapore, after a few days, Jackie and a couple of the other managers, they came up to me and sat down in my cabin and asked me that we are looking for a face of ESPN Singapore, somebody who would represent ESPN everywhere in all our media advertising and hoardings and banners and everywhere. So who do you think would be the best choice for the face of Singapore, the face of ESPN? And I said Harsha Bogle. I mean, the obvious answer that came to me was Harsha Bogle. 1 week later, Harsha Bogle came to Singapore, came and sat in front of me on a chair, and we were talking generally, and he said, you know, some time ago, a few months ago, they were asking me, can you name one man who can run ESPN Singapore? And I said Siraj Sayyed. So, excuse me. So, this is it's just that we like each other's work, I guess. Nothing more than that. He doesn't say that I have mentored him, but he does acknowledge the fact that he felt the need at one point of time to learn from me.
All right.
Any other questions?
You also mentioned about some other commentators who are coming and joining you, especially Kirti Azad, Arun Lal, Tom Alter. These are known names in the industry. Uh, could you give us an experience of how you trained them and what was it all about?
Uh, Tom, getting Tom was very difficult because contacting Tom was impossible. You know, Tom was a very strange character. He did not possess an email ID. Those his email IDs had already come. And he did not possess a phone. I mean, there was a phone. He used to stay in a hostel, which was a Christian religious hostel. His father was a preacher, so he comes from that kind of a background. And I wanted to contact him, and it was so difficult to contact him. So I had to send a message to my nephew in Mumbai to go down to Bombay Central, where his hostel was, with a note, with a letter which I had dictated, and leave it there because he was not around. And he used to spend half the time of his life in close to Dehradun, somewhere near the Doon Valley. So luckily, you know, that note reached him, and he came, and he was so thrilled. I mean, he and I used to drive around Singapore, and I would show him the place. He had never been there, and he just felt that it was his dream come true, and we remained friends forever till his last days. A very strong friendship bond that was cultivated then. With Arun Lal, Arun was a thorough professional. He would, you know, memorize everything that would be useful for him in his commentary. He would check dictionaries. He would come back to me time and again. Ye kaise bolte hain? Ye kaise bolte hain? And his sister was in the Philippines, married to somebody and living in the Philippines. So he said, come over to the Philippines. And I went over and I spent a few days as his guest in the Philippines, which was a fabulous experience. I mean, they were such fabulous hosts, his sister and his brother-in-law. And as far as Kirti is concerned, he is a difficult person. I put him, you have to normally put two people on commentary always. So one is called the color, and the color, the other is the okay, the normal person. So he was the color, being a test and one-day player. And I put Ashutosh Deshmukh next to him. And Ashutosh Deshmukh was a small-time radio commentator, but what's the harm? We can train, nurture new people. He was doing good. And one day Ashutosh came to me and said, I want to go back immediately. I don't want to stay here even for 1 minute. So he says that inside the booth, you know, Kirti was not behaving very cordially with him. So what do? I mean, if I have to find some substitute for him as well, because there was nobody in Singapore. People would come and go. They would not live there. You know, people would be put up at hotel, would come and go. So I said, if Kirti is not behaving very cordially, the best way to make him behave cordially is to call Abhaykant Chaturvedi. Abhaykant Chaturvedi was a very senior, retired commentator who had been a teacher to Kirti Azad in school. And so, you know, he couldn't misbehave with Abhaykant Chaturvedi. So I got Abhaykant at the drop of a hat. You know, his son Abhinav Chaturvedi is a very famous actor. I knew him also. From Delhi, I made him rush. And they did commentary, and after which Kirti came and complained to me, why have you put me with Chaturvedi? Why can't you find anyone else?
All right. So that was nice. Would anyone want to come in with a question? You can unmute or maybe
Yes,
a
sir.
message.
I'm Dominic sir, and thanks a lot for your time. It seems like I enjoyed just having a black coffee, and I thought without sugar, you are adding so much of sugar and so much of emotions, and I never expected. So thanks to Krishna Raj also I, for such a good session. Just
Thank
on
you, Dominic.
a quick note,
Thank you.
like Bollywood is going through rough patch in terms of narcotics, drugs, and all. How was the sport industry? Was clean? Do you think that cricket is clean always? I mean, just a reference. I mean, I don't want you to go into depth. You find
It was never a major issue, but it was a minor issue even then. In short, that's the answer. It was nothing like what we are experiencing now, but it was a minor issue.
So can you elaborate, sir? What kind of minor, like, are they
Very
still
difficult
break?
to very difficult to elaborate because you see my contact was not so much with cricketers. Uh, my contact was with commentators. So I can guarantee you that 99% of commentators were not involved in drug abuse. And why I say 99% is because there's no way you can be sure. So, but cricketers, I really can't comment. I mean, I was just a spectator or as an audience, like you might have been at any time, or anyone else might have been at any
So I'm sure you might have gotten an opportunity to meet some of our players or cricketers specifically. I mean, I'm sure it was only cricket then, wherein we had to cater to the local audience in India. Other games have not really reached out in a big way. It's only because of these kind of channels that we started seeing more of probably an NBA or a golf tournament, or even for that matter, tennis. So I'm sure you might have met a few players in your lifetime. Can you give us some experience on that?
Actually, only two. Sunil Gavaskar, and while I was interviewing, he insisted that I should have a chat with Sandeep Patil because he said, "मुझे छोड़ो ये इसके पीछे पड़ो इसको एक्टर बनना है. He's crazy about acting." And we had a good chat, but nothing beyond that. I didn't get to know many other cricketers, sadly.
All right. Besides cricket, would you also? You said you've also commentated on golf. Somehow you knew the
No, I
terms
didn't.
like birdie.
No, I didn't. I didn't commentate on golf. There was just one man in Singapore who seemed to know the game, and I had a chat with him before I put him on to do the commentary. I tested him out. His name was Kamal Mathur, and I just knew, a few strokes, and like I said, things like eagle and birdie and hole in one, and things like that. So he seemed to be knowing the game, and he did golf commentary whenever required. Golf was not a regular thing. Golf used to happen maybe once in a week or once in 2 weeks. And we would always call Kamal Mathur, and it seemed that people appreciated his commentary, so they continued with him.
All right. And you mentioned that it was almost you took almost 1 year to ensure that everything would be up and ready. So did you have to undergo any training yourself, or did you impart any training to people whom you recruited post that?
for commentary.
for commentary and to get oriented to the games, like any training or something that was given to them?
I was quite oriented to the game. I was quite oriented to the game. I was quite mad about the game. I would have been. I used to pray. Among my prayers, the first prayer would be, God, make me a cricketer, when I was a young boy. So I was quite fond of the game, and I still am, and I'm quite aware of most rules and things like that. Maybe a couple of things here and there might escape me, but otherwise, most of it I know. So I did not need to undergo any training. But the other people that I recruited, I would have sessions with them. I would have sessions with them for a few hours sometimes, and check them out whether they can deliver commentary. Not really on the knowledge of cricket, but whether they can deliver commentary. And finally, to make sure that they are on the right track, I would have the headphone on, and I would go and tell them what to say. And sometimes they would just repeat what I said, so that they are on the right track. So that is as far as training went.
Okay. So you're seeing a lot of these new cricketers coming and joining in with Hindi commentary. What do you think is the future of Hindi commentary in general, as you see it now?
I think the future is good and bright, in spite of the fact that there is a tendency to watch more of English commentary, because the game itself, a lot of people feel is a foreign game. It's a British game. A lot of people think that way, and that's why they feel that the Goras or people with white skin have a greater aptitude to deliver commentary. I don't think that is true at all. Unfortunately, the problem with cricket commentary in Hindi was that it started from radio and then went on to Doordarshan, and the policy of radio and Doordarshan has always been not to go overboard. No, they don't like anybody getting very enthusiastic or excited and things like that. So because of that, to play safe, a lot of the commentators, they are dull. They tend to make things not interesting for the viewer or listener on radio. So I think that needs to change. It has changed a bit. It has not changed totally. It has changed a bit. That needs to change totally, so that we can have much more lively, much more exciting, interesting commentary.
So what are some of the terms they would use, like something like Boti Badya shot, or Tarara shot, or just to keep that?
Well, the biggest surprise to me has been Sunil Gavaskar. If you had asked me 5 years ago that Sunil Gavaskar will do Hindi commentary with absolutely correct Hindi pronunciation and the right kind of phrasing, I would not have believed you. That was, to me, was the biggest surprise. There's nothing wrong in saying Karara shot and Bahut Badhiya shot, and absolutely right. You can invent even other terms. Nothing wrong in making things more colorful. Only thing is, don't use strong language. Don't use anything that can be construed as abusive. That's all. Otherwise, yes, Sunil, way to go.
Yeah, I've seen him correct a few people as well in terms of how to pronounce a few words, especially his thing with Jeffrey Boycott. So would you remember that? He would pronounce in the Scottish accent.
Yes. Yes,
character.
yes, I remember that. I remember that incident. While we were recording him, incidentally, he knew that the program was in Hindi, and he knew that his Hindi was very weak. So finally, after discussions and interview and everything, when he came to the studio, he said, "Okay, now you give me a script which I had written for him, and you lock this door from outside and open it only after 1 hour." Look at the amount of dedication, the man has. Nobody ever did that. Maybe nobody ever needed that also, both ways.
Yeah, Gavaskar has also told that he has learned a lot of commentary from Richie Bana. So, in
Yeah,
terms of the English commentary, so he owes him a lot for getting
yeah,
him
sure.
that kind of commentary. Your take on that?
I agree. I agree. He has learned and enriched himself from commentators of his earlier generation. Yes.
So you clearly saw a different kind of method to his commentating, right? And which somebody has to emulate, possibly in Hindi commentary.
Yes, nothing to emulate. And you must develop your own style. I am not of the opinion that two commentators should sound very similar. That can be very boring. So, like I said, even when I had pairs, I would pair, for example, Kirti Azad with Ashutosh Deshmukh, nothing in common really with them, and I'd put Tom Alter with Arun Lal, and nothing in common with them either. So, and there were many others.
All right, thank you. So my last question for the evening. You mentioned that post 97 until 2004, you continued to survive in Singapore against all odds. Can you give a brief idea or some glimpse of what kind of hardships you might have possibly gone through, or something which was unexpected, and then you had to?
Uh, there were major disappointments. You see, ESPN cheated me by making my contract a third-party contract, and they could, remove me at the drop of a hat with no notice and no compensation and no provident fund, which is mandatory in Singapore. So I was suddenly without a job, and once you're without a job, the maximum time you can stay in Singapore is 6 months, after which you have to go back home. And the other problem is that in Singapore, you will only get a job which is very similar to your last job or better than your last job. Now, Hindi commentary in cricket is something that even Singaporeans didn't know anything about. They had not heard about it also. So I couldn't apply anywhere for a job and say, "What was your last job?" I was production coordinator from ESPN Singapore for Hindi sports commentary. What is that? Cricket commentary. So they won't even know. And plus, on paper, my salary was very high. So they would not be able to give me a very high salary. So I went to the immigration department and I showed them my educational certificates. Luckily, I have done a lot of courses and degrees. So they had a good look at it and said, "Everything is fine, but we can't allow you to stay. You have to go back unless you get a job." Meanwhile, I met somebody who told me that there's only one way you can stay here without a job, and that is by starting your own company. I said, "But I have no money." What I had done was, with all the money that I had earned from my job at ESPN Singapore, I had bought a flat in Mumbai. And that was just about enough to cover that expense of the flat in Mumbai. तो क्या कर सकते हैं? कौन सा रास्ता है? एक कंपनी बनाओ. कंपनी कैसे बना सकते हैं? पैसे तो है नहीं. Company of what? I mean, I'm not a trader. I'm an artist. I'm a communicator. I'm a lecturer. I'm a teacher. I'm a trainer. What kind of company can I make? Well, you can call your company Siraj Sayyad. It's okay. So you can do that, provided somebody who is a Singaporean also signs. So they need two signatures, yours and the local person's. And this has to be done in the registrar of company's office. And there was a small fee of $100 or $50 for that. So I said, who will sign for me? Because I don't know anybody here. And even if I know, how can I go and tell someone I'm starting a company called Siraj Sayyad, please sign for me? So coincidentally, I just went to the telecom office there, Singtel, which is the Singapore, like Vodafone or Airtel. And I met a lady, and I told her I'm cancelling my phone because I had already obtained a phone, landline, as well as mobile phone had just come. So she said, why are you cancelling your subscription? And I explained this to her. And she sat down and talked to me for another 5 or 10 minutes. And she said, okay, I will come and sign for you. And you set up your company. I said, I can't believe this. This lady I have just met just a few minutes ago. She doesn't know me from Adam. It turned out later that she was basically from the intelligence department of Singtel. Singtel has its own intelligence department. And you know, whatever I had said, she had checked, even while I was talking to her on the computer. And she was very confident that this man is okay. So she came, she signed. I took that signed document to the immigration office and I said, look, I have set up my own company. Now I am applying for a permanent resident visa for myself. He said, this is very strange. You're applying for yourself. The companies apply for other people, their employees and others. But I said, I'm applying for myself. What's the harm? He said, this is the first time. I have never heard this. Never. It has never happened in the history of Singtel, in the history of immigration, Singapore immigration. And this man went inside, talked for 15 minutes with his boss, came out, and he said, you know, you have so many degrees. We respect those degrees a lot. And plus, you had a very high-paying job. So we are sure that, you know, you will not cause us any problem. So he just signed. And I got what is the permanent resident.
I thought we just lost you.
The phone rang. I resident of Singapore, which I still am, incidentally. 16 years later, 20 years later, actually, if you start from 1997. And with that degree, the first job with that permanent resident status, the first job I took was interpreter institute where people from Bangladesh were coming to work technically, and they had to undergo a test in the construction industry. And the test was in English, and they didn't know English. So they advertised that we need somebody who knows English and Bengali. And coincidentally, my Bengali is not too bad. So I went and applied for that. And can you imagine, from what kind of job to what kind of job I moved on? And for nearly another year or so, that was temporary. It was, on Sundays, every alternate Sunday or sometimes, they would have these tests and I would sort of help them understand the questions which were put in English so that they could accordingly carry out those projects. And many of them used to offer me prayers and blessings. Some of them used to cry because, they were in a different country. They didn't know the language. They didn't know Chinese at all. A lot of people were speaking Chinese and the papers were in English. Their English was bad. And there was somebody here who could help them. So, and then I did a series of jobs. After that, the last job I held there was as a chief public relations officer and chief editor in a publications cum advertising agency, which was in 2004. And in 2004, there was a major economic crisis. 2003-4 was a very major economic crisis in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, after which I came back forever for good. But I still visit Singapore. So whenever I get a chance for a holiday, I go to Singapore, and now I have friends. So I catch up with them and spend some time there. It's a nice change. It's like second home because I lived there for a total of 8 years. So 8 years is long enough time for you to develop bonds with the place.
So are you fully aware of Singapore now? Have you traveled all the places? Which city would you live in?
Yes, I have, but it keeps changing because in the last 5 years, they have started 5 metros. Maybe not 5 years, maybe in the last 10 years, they have started 5 new metros, and because of that, there have been a lot of roads, new roads and diversions made. So those I am a little unaware of, but otherwise, even local Singaporeans sometimes call me, some of my friends, and ask me if they want to go somewhere or they want some information about something. I'm so familiar with the place.
All right, sir. Thank you for being so candid and explaining each and everything and giving us so much of insights today. Thank you for all your help and cooperation today. And I hope everyone enjoyed it.
My pleasure, Krishna. And it's time to log off and say goodbye and good night to everybody. Keep well, stay safe.
Good night. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.